Good evening. How's everyone? Welcome to our Hangout tonight. My name is Elian Ramos, and I'll be your host for the next half hour. Tonight, we're going to be talking about art. As we know, art is at the center of cultural expression. But in a country like ours, it's so hard to really preserve that cultural expression. I mean, especially for a culture that is as diverse as Latino culture is. And we see that most of the responsibility for preserving this cultural expression relies on or falls into the responsibility of the Latino artists, the Latino curators, and the organizations that work in the arts arena. So as we get ready for celebrating Hispanic Heritage, which starts next week, or as I call it, Hispanic hysteria, I wanted to really bring together a group of Latino friends that I have who work in the arts arena and who are really stakeholders in the work that all of these different organizations are doing to preserve Latino culture. So tonight I want to talk to them about Latino art. You know, what is the definition of Latino art? Why is it so important to really support Latino artists and to highlight them? And also, what is the role of art in social action and activism? So tonight I have with me Adriana Gallego, who is the Deputy Director of the National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, NALAC. How are you, Adriana?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Elian, for having us this evening. I'm great.
Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you. Next up, I have Edwin Hill, who is a artist and social activist and the founder of Faces of Diversity. How are you, Edwin?
Very good. Thank you, Liam, for inviting me to be part of this amazing opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I have Taina Caragol, who is the curator for Latino art at the National Portrait Gallery. How are you, Taina?
Hello, Elian. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here with these great panelists.
Yeah, and it's an honor to have you all. We will be joined in a little bit by Estuardo Rodriguez, who is the executive director at the Friends of the National Latino Museum. So we're going to be hearing from Estuardo in a little bit, but in the meantime, we're going to be talking to our friends here, and I want to welcome everyone who is watching. Let's start with a general discussion of Latino art. You know, how would you define Latino art?
Well, if I can start, I think that's a question that has no easy answer, because national and culturally based categories are helpful, but they can also be, sometimes if we take them as, you know, in an essentialist way, they can be quite limiting. So those constructs are based on historical paradigms, on traditions, artistic movements that have been part of the community of people, and for Latino art in particular, it is very common to recall, of course, the tradition, the community-based art traditions of the Chicano movement in the 1960s and 70s, of the Nuyorican movement around the same period. There are recurring motifs in the art of U.S. Latinos, for example, you know, the theme of displacement, the theme of exile that is also seen in the work of Cuban American artists, for example. You know, there have been all these artistic movements that are part of a history already, and that ground Latino art, but while those movements have developed, there have also been artists producing artwork that does not fit exactly into those movements and categories. And whenever I speak of Latino art, I think it is, you know, for me it is very important to keep the boundaries of that term open, to give space, to give room for anything that would seem perhaps a bit esoteric and out of those established traditions.
Very true, very true. Anyone else?
I think that we live in a very exciting time where Latino demographics are shifting within our own multiple Latinidades, and certainly artists who self-identify as Latino artists. Oh, hello, Estuardo.
How are you? Welcome.
I promise you I know how to do these things. This is just a bad day.
Don't worry. I think we're slaves of technology. You know, we pretty much do whatever it lets us do, right?
Exactly. I apologize for jumping in. Go ahead.
No, but it's so great to have you. Go ahead, Adriana.
It's wonderful to have you here, Estuardo. So I see that artists that self-identify as Latino, and to me that's the most important factor in defining Latino arts and culture, is that an artist comes to it from that entry point, or an organization comes to it from that entry point. And then there are limitless possibilities. I mean, we're only limited to the extent that our imagination is limited. And certainly in the work that NALAC supports and promotes, we're there for the Latino arts sector in the most inclusive, diverse way possible across the country and across the globe. So we see that artists who are working with issues of social justice, and artists that are dealing with formal issues, or traditional art forms or innovative art forms, that those are not mutually exclusive to the Latino art lens, but we like to keep it open and keep the ownership of self-identifying with the artist.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Estuardo, just to bring you up to date, we started a couple of minutes ago, but we were talking about defining Latino art, because there's really not, I mean, our culture is so diverse that it's really hard to kind of encapsulate what Latino art really is. And so we're each giving our opinion about what it is. So I don't know, Edwin, do you want to go next and then give Estuardo a couple of seconds to think about the question?
Yes, of course. I completely agree with everybody. You know, I am an artist and I am a dreamer, and I always say, like, art is expression of life, right? And as expression of life, we always are telling stories about what is happening right now with the Latino arts in general, not just in the United States, but in the whole world. Because when you talk about Latinos, they are just in America. They are in South America, Central America, and Europe, and many places of the world. And I think they try to kind of come together with the culture and with the blend, I say cultural blend, that's happening right now in the whole world. And it's kind of hard to define because there's so many new things, ideas, coming and getting out, and I'm pretty sure the people who has the opportunity to travel around the world, they be in contact with all this new blending on art and in culture, and all of those are pretty true, and all those are valid, and all those are right, and we just need to kind of assimilate all that new information as how do you say, the technology right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Estuardo, you want to chip in a little bit?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. From the perspective of the American Latino Museum and the campaign that we run, I think we have. It's been very educational for us. We have been working on this for about 8 or 9 years, and throughout those years, I've been working to find ways to weave into the social media content we put out, the events that we work on. I've been trying to weave in some examples of what would go into an American Latino museum. One of the challenges that we have, though, is making sure that we're presenting it very clearly, that our focus is history, art, and culture as it relates to the American Latino. So the first challenge has been for us to define what is or who are American Latinos. I've gotten emails from people in Miami who say, my grandfather was an amazing painter in Cuba, and I have these wonderful art paintings. Can I send them to the American Latino Museum? And I have to explain to them, that's amazing, and I'm sure that that would be something valuable. But number one, I don't have anywhere to put your art because we don't have a building yet. Number two, our focus really, is those stories and those historic contributions of U.S. Latinos, the presence of Latinos within the United States. And so while we want to be respectful of the beautiful artwork that has come from outside of the U.S. In its origin, we want to start with those artists that express themselves in various forms within the United States, be it across murals, paintings, graffiti. Even in New York, we've been talking about preserving some of the art and graffiti that has been has been decorating New York City for decades. And so it takes various forms, and that's one of the challenges that we've had. But I think we've started to and have begun to make clear the highlight and emphasis that we're trying to make with the future American Latino Museum.
Beautiful, and it's so needed, no? And I want to, now that I have you all here, let's take a little step back, and I want to talk a little bit about the kind of work that you do, because I think that a lot of viewers are not necessarily familiar with the work that each of you does, and I was waiting for Eduardo to be here so that we could go down the line and you can all introduce a little bit. Now that we have somewhat defined what Latino art is, then now let's talk about your work within the realm of art. And I'll go down the line again. Let's start with Adriana.
Well, thank you, Leanne. I just love the format of being able to jump into the questions right away and contextualize it within the work that we do. So to reiterate, NALAC is a nonprofit arts organization dedicated to the promotion, advancement, development, and cultivation of the Latino arts field at a national level, and we also have international programs. We've been around for 25 years, and we're the only national multidisciplinary Latino arts service organization. We deliver programs that stabilize and revitalize the U.S. Latino arts sector by providing critical advocacy, funding, networking opportunities, professional development training for Latino artists and Latino arts organizations in every region of the country. And we do this through various grant programs, national convenings, research documentation, and leadership development.
Edwin?
I am an artist. I moved to the United States in 2000 after lost my partner in Colombia in a pretty tragic situation. So my background is in business and psychology, my master in psychology. So when I come to the United States, I heal my kind of all the pain through the art. So I believe art is an amazing tool to bring the community together. And I start creating different programs for the community. One of those is where the project what I have right now is called Faces of Diversity. And my idea is highlighting the importance of diversity in the United States. So I go to the schools and I share my life with the students and I tell them about the opportunities what we can have. And then with Tom Prince, we recreate the face of one of the students from the school or the organization. And it's very powerful because I see how positive the students react about this project and how art can help, not just to heal my life, to heal many other people's life and tell the story of the Latinos in America, what we are doing here, and how we are coming together to the community, and we are making part of the community and doing an amazing things. So that is Edwin is a dreamer. I believe in art, I love and I have a pretty strong passion for art and what I do.
Beautiful. Eduardo?
Right. So as I mentioned, I'm with the Friends of the American Latino Museum. I wear a hat there as the executive director, but I also work with the Raven Group here in Washington. Through the American Latino Museum, or the Friends of the American Latino Museum, we have been advocating for the creation of an American Latino Museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C. We've been working with Congressman Javier Becerra and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen for all those 9 years now to support the creation of the commission, which was created, and their report was turned in 2011 to Congress. And now working on the next piece of legislation to designate the Arts and Industries building on the National Mall as the future home for the American Latino Museum. So lots of work, lots of engagement through social media. We're very excited about our reach of over 380,000 people, supporters through Facebook and Twitter and our listserv. So it's going well, but we've got a long road ahead.
But that speaks a lot about the need for it and the willingness and the support of people out there for the American Latino Museum, right?
It definitely does.
And Taina, your work is also a very important work. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at the National Portrait Gallery?
Sure. I am the curator of Latino art and history at the National Portrait Gallery, as you mentioned, Elian. And the NPG is a history museum. It's part of the Smithsonian. And it's a museum that tells the story of the United States through portraits of people who have made contributions of national impact. My job there is to shine the spotlight on the contributions of U.S. Latinos to history, art, and culture in our temporary exhibitions and also in our permanent collection. So I'm as much thinking about exhibitions as about works to acquire representing U.S. Latino figures and also Latino artists who practice portraiture as an art form. I have an exhibition on view right now that opened in late August, and it's titled Portraiture Now, Staging the Self. And it's a show of contemporary portraiture through the lens of 6 contemporary Latino artists, including Rachel Mosman, Karen Miranda, and David Antonio Cruz, who are all based in New York, Carly Fernandez from Los Angeles, Maria Martinez Cañas, and Michael Vasquez from Florida, Miami. And I'm also working on an exhibition that will open next year, a historical show on Dolores Huerta, co-founder of the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez, and really a giant of civil rights. So I'm very, very excited about that show.
Yay! Dolores
Sounds exciting.
Fantastic. Yes. Dolores is a really great friend, and she's been a guest on this show many times, and an amazing personal friend. So thank you so much for doing that. She needs all the recognition she can get. She's been so amazing.
She does.
So this brings me precisely what you're doing, Taina, to the next question, and I want to direct it to Edwin in particular because he's our resident artist, right, in the Hangout. I know some of you also do art, but I want to hear from Erin. In your opinion, do you feel that Latino art actually has already a place in mainstream art in America? How do you feel as an artist from your perspective?
I think we are in the process right now. I think the numbers of the Latinos in America is something that made the people think, especially the museums and different organizations, about what is happening here. It's a big community. It's blending to our community, and from my 15 years in the United States, I can see that kind of is changing a lot, especially in Charlotte, in the area where I live. It's very interesting because at the beginning the people know was the kind of friendly or positive about Latino art, but I see all the transition from 15 years ago till right now, and it's completely different. And not just here. When I talk to another artist in different places in the United States, they say that's happening. I'm pretty sure California is. They have a long history of the Latino art and murals and activists and the community and this blend. But the rest of the America, I see that's happening right now. I think we are writing that history right now in this moment.
How does everybody else feel about this? Is there consensus, or how do you guys feel?
Well, I feel that traditionally Latino art has been quite absent from mainstream museums across the country. But I think I agree with Edwin that there seems to be a turning point right now, and and demographics are helping us definitely to bring awareness to Latino art and culture, and to how much it is part of. It's not just a recent phenomenon; it's part of this country's history, really, since its founding. And if you want to extend it even further, since before, because of the history of Spain in this territory, right? So depending on how how broad you want to extend those chronological historical boundaries, but Latinos are very much part of this country's history. I think there are increasingly, well, I have to give credit to the Latino Center at the Smithsonian for facilitating the presence of curators at different units of the Smithsonian in the last few years. 4 of us were hired last year, and before that, my dear colleague Carmen Ramos, who works at the Smithsonian American Art Museum and curated a wonderful show called Our America, the Latino Presence in American Art, last year, has been here since 3 years. So I think that is the presence of curators dedicated to Latino matters in national museums, in the National Museum and Research Complex called the Smithsonian, is really helping to turn the tide and to make everyone aware of how important it is to represent the art and culture of Latinos in our museums across the nation. And in addition to that, there have been veteran organizations like NALAC and so many local community organizations that have been working very hard for decades to give space, to give room and an outlet to Latino artists.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I'd love to jump in on this and just quickly comment that there's a need for acceptance by the broad and mainstream art community. I think that the assistance of people like Cheech Marine, for example, who has had an amazing Chicano exhibit that has not only traveled the United States, but also in Europe. The acceptance of Latino art as art, period, and not just a niche community of artists is very important. The fact that the president, for example, selected a Cuban American to be the poet laureate during the last inauguration is further validation and acceptance that Latino art, be it in traditional paintings, graphics, or sculpture, or poetry, or interpretive art. I mean, all of these things need to go to mainstream stages or audiences in order to really be accepted universally, as opposed to people assuming that, oh, if it's Chicano art, then it's just for the Latinos, or for doing graffiti in New York and it's just for the Museo del Barrio, right? Mm-hmm. The truth is that Latino art arrives the more we hear the president and other artists, mainstream artists, talk about how impressive it is, how impactful it is, and how it tells more of the American story.
Beautiful, and I want to take the opportunity, and Adriana, I know that is your turn to talk, and maybe we'll just tie it in with the next question. So, the point that you all making here, that Latino art needs to become more part of the mainstream, and that is already happening. So, how does NALAC and organizations like yours support the work of artists like Edwin and of organizations like like the American Latino Museum and every organization? How does your organization fit the specific needs of artists, Latino artists in the community?
Thank you, Elian. Well, first of all, we're very intentional and deliberate in going out to the field and listen to our communities. We don't make one step forward without listening to the field, and we do this through the national convenings that I was just talking about. We host to date, we've hosted 26 regional arts training workshops, and this fall we will be in Providence, Rhode Island, October 11th and 12th, or 10th and 11th. I hope you'll all join us there. We're also going to have a regional arts training workshop in Miami on the 21st and 22nd, and another one in Detroit, June 2015. I was just talking to Edwin, and we're hopeful of that we'll have a regional arts training workshop in Charlotte in the coming years. So we're definitely resourcing the field in many different capacities. We provide direct funding support to the artists that are risk takers, innovators, creative thinkers that are tying their work to issues of social justice and making real impacts in their community. And so the fruits of the grants that we give out don't just land with the artists in silos, but there's actually community resonance in the way that it can actually bolster real social change. And that's the kind of social change that we continue to support and we want to see, so that we can mediate our own identities in the media, so that we can be in, so that there's no question of why a quality artistic artwork by Latino artists cannot be shown or cannot be celebrated or awarded among any of the disciplines in any arena in the United States or globally. Certainly identity is a point of entry, but it's not necessarily the be-all, end-all. And we certainly, we've given $1.7 million in grants directly to individual artists and organizations that are Latino and that support Latino artists' work. And we also capacitate the field with leadership development programs where we can give them the skills that they need to the tried and true strategies for responsive cultural stewardship, leadership development, and so that they can also obtain the frameworks for bolstering advocacy and first voice on their own behalf. And so, as we were talking earlier off the air, that one of the priorities that one of our programs has, the Advocacy Leadership Institute, we take our participants to Washington, D.C. and actually give them strategies to have conversations with their members of Congress. And one of the priorities that we share with them is to talk to their members of Congress about the importance of Latino arts and culture and why it is so important, and what a leading message the U.S. would be sending to have a Latino museum on the Mall to underscore our Americanness. And that we also form as part of the fabric of this rich American landscape. So we come at it from a wholesome perspective, looking at it through advocacy, leadership, regionals, convenings.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful work, and I imagine it's maybe a little hard to do that community engagement that is so important, right? So I want to ask Taina this. Art is viewed as something somewhat elitist, you know, something that at least is not seen as something that is for the everyday person, and that is a general perspective, perception that is I believe is wrong. Right. So what do you think can be done to engage more the community, to kind of democratize arts, so that it's a little bit more accessible to more people in our communities, and also for our kids to think of it as an area that they would like to be part of?
Well, I think museums in general have been places mainly frequented by the upper classes and upper middle class, and when you it's hard for people who are struggling with their everyday life, you know, to feed their families, to have to think of visiting a museum as a leisure possibility, because they probably do not have much time for leisure, you know. But I think that's why the role of grassroots cultural organizations and alternative spaces is so important in changing that perspective. You know, there have been, and there's a very strong tradition of that in U.S. Latino art. You know, places like Self-Help Graphics in Los Angeles, or like the Taller Boricua in New York. I mean, and so many others are very important, have been very important in integrating art to the communities and inviting people to work with artists to express their concerns through art, to introduce people who perhaps do not go to the museum to, you know, to work, to introduce them technically through art and help them develop projects that where they can see themselves in. I think museums have a very a lot of work to do in that respect. I think this is work that is not done overnight. At the Portrait Gallery in particular, we are working to make our exhibitions bilingual. We are developing a number of strategies that we hope will bring new audiences over time, you know, through a sustained development. And this includes everything from translating, from making our exhibitions bilingual into Spanish, to providing tours in Spanish, you know, doing family days where that are advertised in different communities, in local Latino communities, bringing Latino artists in, and also in the context of our museum, which is a history museum, making Latinos visible, so that people see themselves in the museum and in its walls, in its space, and can really identify with this vision we are presenting of the United States and their history.
Beautiful. And speaking of creating spaces for where Latinos can be visible, my next question is for Estuardo. In respect to the Latino Museum, we've been hearing about the plans for the Latino Museum for a while now. So my question would be, why is it so important to have a museum? I know Taina already touched on that a little bit, but I want to hear from your perspective. And also, where are we in the whole process of creating the museum? I know we've been talking about it for a while now. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think everyone here has already contributed to the argument as to why we need the museum. Going back to the previous question regarding why or how do we make art more accessible or more interesting to the broader community, the uniqueness and the interesting thing about Latino art is that it was born from the community. Really, it's not the Van Gogh painting a painting for some millionaire that who's commissioned it. It's art that traditionally and for the most part it has been commissioned. I'm sorry, not the community and for the community. The U.S. experience and the suffering that that our community has gone through the civil rights era and just through different parts of the country in our experiences. So I wanted to say that about that, because I think that also answers your question now of what goes in this museum and where are we. This has been a long process. I think some would say that if you ask anyone regarding the African American Museum, how long has that taken? Some might say maybe about 20 years, but others who have been working with this for a longer period of time would say 75 years, because there were different iterations or attempts to create a museum to honor the history of African Americans in the United States. We are only going on 9 years so far, but we have had a commission. We have another piece of legislation to designate the home of a future American Latino museum. I think Adriana has also already made a couple of arguments as to why this museum is necessary. There are not only artists out there that deserve to have a home, but the history that we all share in the country. One thing I will share with you that I've shared many times traveling around the country is that when I was growing up learning about U.S. history, many times I would simply learn that the Pilgrims landed on the East Coast, and as they moved west, they brought civilization with them. No one mentioned the fact that there were Spaniards and Mexicans that had built cities there 500 years before the first Pilgrim ever landed on that part of the continent. So, I mean, these are the stories that are not just Latino stories, they're American stories, U.S. stories. These are the blank pages in our history books that need to be filled with the accuracy of our American history and legacy. So I think those are the reasons why we need to have it. The legislation is there. We're moving through, hopefully this year, we'll designate the Arts and Industries Building as a future home of the American Latino Museum. And then, going back to our friends at the Smithsonian, they will have the responsibility then to usher through this campaign. The Friends of the American Latino Museum will continue to help the process through, because there will be another piece of legislation, another 2 pieces of legislation after this one. So we'll continue to do our work, but the Smithsonian will become responsible for the overall campaign and creation of this museum once this next piece of legislation goes through. So I'll leave it to you, Taina, and Eduardo Diaz at the Smithsonian's Latino Center. Pónganse a trabajar.
No, but I think beyond them, also there's a responsibility by all the community, to also do the big push so that this museum actually happens, and that has to do with also pushing our legislators to pass the legislation to make it possible, right?
Yes, and with this Congress, you know how difficult that is, considering the Congress that we have. But we're going to give it a shot. We're going to give it a shot.
Yeah, not that we want to get too political, right? Because
no,
we're talking about art. But speaking of politics and getting the community involved, we all know that that art and activism have had a long history. And Eduardo, you mentioned the whole part about the African American civil rights and the Latino civil rights. We were also a big part of that movement. Edwin was talking about earlier about the whole Chicano movement and the art that was so tied to everything that has been happening along our history, right? So why do you think art makes such a powerful asset to social movements, but also what is needed to increase the amount of programs and activities that kind of tie together art and activism? Who wants to go first?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that we need more artists that they believe in social art and try to bring the community together through art. Because as a lot of you say tonight, I think it's a disconnection right now from the community and art. And it's something needs to happen to bring the community to believe in art and see art like they need to be seen. Because it's not a piece of a decoration for your house, or it's not just an ornament for your office or something like that. I think art is more powerful than that. And it's our responsibility to create those programs to make the people understand the importance of art, because art is telling the history of this country. And for many, many years, it's telling the history of the world. And I think it's an amazing tool to make believe on life. That's what I feel. And when I work with the social art projects, I think they are very important right now because they make me bring not just the community together, or they just don't give me the opportunity to talk about one topic like the bullying, or the importance of one organization like what we do in Colombia, Buen Comienzo, or highlight the importance of one specific ethnic group in the area. I think art is a history, is part of life, and it's expression of life. I need to be highlighted in that way, and it's the responsibility from the artists and from the organizations to create kind of those programs to highlight it.
Very true. Who else wants to go?
I think if I may, one of the strengths that art has is that it is a basic human right. It is something that is innate to every human civilization, and to some extent, it is a universal language. People are responsive to sights, sounds, all of the senses in ways that can be very meaningful and surprising to us, in a way that doesn't have to be very intellectual, but it's actually triggering a lot of intellectually based synapses and changing the neural connections that we make in our brain. So aside from being a very powerful tool for transformation, it's very powerful in movements, in moving the needle for social justice, in not too much of a different way in which it can move the needle for other consumerist practices. But in movements of social justice, I think it serves as a mechanism to translate the human experience in ways that people can, from all walks of life, can understand. It really skips through any kind of educational barriers and can really get to that X factor, the heart of the matter, that sometimes cannot be expressed in our own language, but that needs to be manifested in some other, through an art form. So I think that art really sort of cuts through all of the barriers that may exist in people understanding each other culturally, understanding each other intergenerationally, even understanding each other as genders. So it's a very powerful tool in bringing communities together for social change.
Anybody else, Diana or Estuardo?
I agree.
I think that was pretty good.
Yes. I think art can really make us aware of realities that we take for granted and that we live every day, and for some reason we don't have enough distance to analyze them. I think art sometimes just triggers that moment of, you know, being awake and looking at it from the outside and imagining a different possibility. And that's where the potential lies.
Beautiful. So what would you tell, just in closing, because I think that we went beyond the time that we had allotted, but in closing, I would love to give you the opportunity to do a call to action and to really tell the community, you know, what can they do, why should they support art created by Latinos, and also your organizations and the work that you're doing every day. So please share all of the projects that you're working on and how people can support it, and why should they support it to begin with. Who wants to go first?
The ladies first.
Adriana.
I'd be happy to, again, extend a very cordial invitation to all our communities out there to join NALAC for the regional arts training workshops that are coming up in Providence, Rhode Island, in Miami, in Charlotte in the next couple of years, and in Detroit in June. There'll be many opportunities to engage directly with individual artists and arts organizations who are doing very exciting work and are reporting back from the edges of perception. But it's also a really good way of rolling up one's sleeves and contributing to a cause that is bigger than ourselves. And it's a great opportunity for us to listen to you and hear what your concerns are so that we can continue to be responsive to the issues of our time. And I also invite artists and organizations to take a look at the leadership, the NALAC leadership program that we have every summer, and to to keep an eye out for a pilot program that will be piloting in the next year called the Advanced Intercultural Institute, because we do understand that we do not work in silos. We work we're stronger when we work with different communities. Thank you.
Beautiful. And if you guys want to look at the work that NALAC is doing, their website is nalac.org. So NALAC.org. Edwin?
Okay.
I'll just go down the line.
I have a lot of things to say. No, first I want to thank Adriana for this opportunity. And I want to invite everyone to follow the project what I'm doing, especially Faces of Diversity. Right now we are trying to create the face of the Childs of Charlotte. This project is sponsored by Cherry Williams and is part of the Hispanic Heritage Month. They just not celebrate one day, they celebrate the whole day, the importance of the Latino community. And they asked me to tell everyone if they want to follow this project, they can see us. It's called Esto Pinta Bien, hashtag Esto Pinta Bien. They can follow the pictures and the whole history of this face. The face is going to be located at the Imaginon. It's part of the Public Library of Charlotte. It's 8x8. It's in recyclable glass. The glass we're using is the old glass from the old buildings in Charlotte. So it's called upcycling. So it's a beautiful, you can see a little bit about this kind of projects. My goal is creating 111 faces of diversity around the world. So far, this is going to be my number 12. After this, I get a grant to go to Dubai next year. I am very excited about this, and my hope is like if somebody's watching this, they can contact me. My website is edwinhill.com, in español, Edwin Hill, con G de gato, .com. And you can find more information. I am a dreamer. I believe like art is an amazing tool to bring the community together, to create social justice, and to do a lot of great things for the human beings. And please support art and support this beautiful woman who invited us to make us talk about the importance of the Latino art in America. Elian, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Very nice.
Thank you.
Qué lindo, qué lindo. Again, Edwin's website is edwinhill.com. Please follow. I believe that all of the websites are rotating right now on the Hangout, so you can also click directly on the links that are showing on the screen. And now, Estuardo?
Well, number one, I think your program, your show should be like the Today Show, an hour and a half at least, and then we could do another half just in Spanish for the
Yes.
late morning crowd. But thank you very much for putting this together. I do apologize to everyone for being late and having technical difficulties, but I'm honored to be part of this group because everyone really is helping my efforts and the efforts of the American Latino Museum and the members of Congress that co-sponsor this bill. You are providing the evidence, the arguments, the case studies for why we need an American Latino Museum, and more importantly, what we've been trying to share with throughout our campaign of the Friends of the American Latino Museum is that our role isn't to create a museum that sits in Washington by itself with some sort of divider between what the community and what is happening in cultural centers all over the country, but it's completely the opposite. This museum will exist and our work exists to promote what Edwin is doing in Charlotte. The programs of the Smithsonian Latino Center around the country, not just to keep it all in DC, but to spread information, share opportunities. I will visit your page, Edwin, and find a way to promote that through our social media and let people know that there is an amazing art exhibit happening in Charlotte, and if people have a chance, they should see it themselves if they go through Charlotte. I also want to quickly thank the folks at the National Portrait Gallery because it's not just about creating this museum and having everything that's Latino to go into the museum, but it should be what is missing on the mall within those walls. but the National Portrait Gallery continues to show and exhibit, American Latino.
Ay, ay, ay.
I think we got he got a little cut off there, but anyway, you should all support the work that Estuardo is doing. Estuardo and everyone that is working with him. There's such an amazing group of people working for the American Latino Museum Initiative. And their website is americanlatinomuseum.org. There's a lot of links within there where you can actually support the petitions that there are for the museum and get involved in ways that are more than just, liking something on Facebook, but also contacting your local representatives so that they act and they make this legislation happen so that we can finally have a home for a lot of the Latino artists and a lot of the history of our culture that needs to have a home somewhere. I think we're getting him back. Estuardo, I already shared your website. Sorry that you got cut off there.
Thank you. I wanted to end. I just wanted to end the show with the way I started it. Technical difficulties at the beginning and at the end. So thank you very much.
There's something to be said for consistency.
I am consistent. I'm consistent. Let me just say thank you very much. I support all the work that you all do. You're amazing. Thanks for the opportunity, Elian.
Same here, and again, reiterating that everybody should support the work that you're doing to make this Latino Museum happen. And finally, but not least, we're gonna let Taina tell us a little bit about her work and how we can support what the folks at the National Portrait Gallery are doing.
Well, it's quite easy. I hope you all come see the exhibition, Portraiture Now Staging the Self, and then the Huerta exhibition next year, and that you do not you not only come see these shows, but you come regularly to our museum and to the Smithsonian museums in general to look at this cultural patrimony that is displayed here, that is your cultural patrimony as well. It is very important to find that sense of belonging in there, and if you don't see yourself, just let us know. We are aware that there are failures in the exhibition, that there are people missing, that there are communities missing, and it's not just Latinos. This is a problem that is broader than that, and that has many reasons. It's not ill will. It's the histories of collecting, how they evolve. There are many, many reasons, many practical ones as well. I would invite you to come here, to visit us, to follow us on Twitter, to check our website, and engage with what we do, and let us hear from you as well. And also, I would like to. I was going to say something really important that I just forgot.
Well, we were talking about, before we started, we were talking about the need, how you need resources as well, and how
exactly. No, I just wanted to say that engaging with cultural organizations there are many ways of doing it. Presence is important. Intellectual support is important. And for those who can, economic support is also very important. It takes money to do art programs. It takes money to put exhibitions up, to bring acquisitions into the museum, because artists live of what we pay for their work, really, and for the support we give them for their projects and residencies. And so I think it is very important to stress that we're very grateful for the support of corporations, which is quite large in the Latino art sector, but we also need individual donors. It is important that everyone who can, supports us economically as well. I think it is very important.
Thank you so much for saying that. And again, for those of you who are watching, the website should be on the screen there. The exhibit is called Staging the Self at the National Portrait Gallery, and the website is npg.si.edu. And you can find the link to the specific exhibit within the website there. Please do support all of these amazing organizations and artists that are here in this Hangout. I want to thank Adriana, Edwin, Estuardo, and Taina. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And thanks to all of you who are watching. I want to leave you with, you know, please support all of these organizations, and don't forget that taking care and preserving our culture and heritage is not just the work of these organizations here and these artists, but it's everybody's work. If we don't do it, nobody's gonna do it for us. And so it's our responsibility. Please, let's continue supporting them, and please, you know, make your life be art. Art is life, right? As Edwin would say.
That's right.
So to all of you, have a great night, and thank you so much for being here. I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
¿Ya?
Ya.
¿Estamos?
That was great. Thank you so